There are minds that do not merely function, they penetrate. They descend into the depths where few dare to look. They walk where language begins to dissolve and symbols begin to speak. If you are one of those rare few, you do not think like the crowd. You are not interested in the surface. You are compelled by what is hidden. And because of that, you may often feel misunderstood, not because you are broken, but because you are built for something deeper. The first sign of such a mind is an obsession with inner truth. Not the kind of truth that can be shouted across a table, but the kind that creeps in through silence. You seek meaning in dreams, in patterns, in shadows. While others rush to explain, you pause to understand. You don't just ask what or how, you demand to know why. And this why drives you into realms that defy simple explanation. The second sign is solitude, not loneliness, but solitude. There is a difference. You are not afraid to be alone, because in solitude you find your richest conversations. Your mind turns inward like a spiral staircase, and each step down brings you closer to something real. Others may find it unsettling that you are not easily entertained, but that is because your soul seeks something enduring, not just something exciting. Third, you experience life symbolically. A falling leaf is not just a falling leaf. It is time passing, something ending, something being released. You are not content with literal meaning. You know the world speaks in metaphors. To you, every emotion, every encounter, every image is layered, and you interpret it all not just with the intellect, but with the full force of your being. Fourth, your emotional landscape is profound. You are not too sensitive. You are attuned. What others call emotional overload is simply your instrument picking up frequencies they cannot hear. You feel the moods of a room before anyone speaks. You sense unrest beneath laughter. You recognize the sadness in someone's eyes even when they say they are fine. And that depth, though isolating, is a gift. Fifth, you question identity. Not only your own, but everyone's. You are aware that the mask people wear is not the whole person, and so you are rarely satisfied with appearances. You want to know what lies beneath the role, the label, the facade. You want to meet the self behind the self, and that desire often distances you from people who fear being seen too clearly. Sixth, you embrace contradiction. You are not confused by paradox. You are fascinated by it. You understand that truth is not always neat, that the psyche is not a straight line. You can love and be angry at the same time. You can believe and doubt in the same breath. Others may call this inconsistency, but to you it is the very nature of being whole. So if you find that most people do not understand you, it may not be a flaw. It may be the clearest indication that your mind was not designed to follow the herd. It was designed to explore the soul. The pursuit of inner truth is not a hobby for you. It is a necessity, like breath. It is not something you do in passing. It is the very framework through which you see the world. For most people, truth is functional. It serves a purpose. It makes life easier. It helps navigate the day. But for you, truth is existential. It is not just about what works, but about what is. You are not content to live on the surface, repeating what has been handed down to you. You must see with your own eyes, feel with your own heart, and understand with your own mind. This need drives you beyond facts and into the realm of essence. From early on, you may have felt a strange discomfort in accepting things at face value. You noticed what others ignored. You sensed contradiction in people's words, even when their tone seemed convincing. You observed how truths were manipulated for comfort or control, and something within you resisted, not because you wanted to rebel, but because you could not lie to yourself. There is a silent contract you hold with yourself, to be honest, even when honesty is painful, to face the shadow, even when others close their eyes. That contract cannot be broken without wounding your soul. You are compelled to ask the questions that unravel easy answers. Why am I here? What is the meaning of suffering? What lies beyond appearances? You do not ask to impress or to debate. You ask because these questions burn inside you. You feel that beneath the noise of life, beneath the distractions and rituals, there is something timeless and real waiting to be seen. You want to peel back the layers of illusion, not just in society but in yourself. And that journey is not always glorious. It is often lonely, but you walk it because you must. The people around you may find your intensity disquieting. They may say you are too serious, too quiet, too lost in thought, but they do not see that you are not lost. You are searching. They do not understand that you are not escaping life. You are engaging with it at a depth that many are afraid to explore. You are not avoiding reality. You are attempting to perceive reality in its unfiltered, raw form, and that makes you different. This obsession with inner truth often brings you to the brink of what the mind can hold. You begin to see that truth is not a fixed point, but a living process. It changes shape as your awareness expands. What you once believed may fall apart, but in its place something more real is born. And this cycle of death and rebirth becomes a rhythm in your life. You lose illusions but gain clarity. You suffer disillusionment but grow in strength. You trade certainty for depth, and that for you is a worthy exchange. To have a mind like this is to live between worlds. You understand logic, but you also hear the whispers of the unconscious. You appreciate knowledge, but you crave wisdom. You can operate in the daylight of reason, but you are not afraid of the night. You know that truth is not only found in textbooks, it is found in silence, in dreams, in the tension between what is spoken and what is felt. And that makes you a rare kind of thinker. Most people seek comfort. You seek meaning, and because of that you may often walk alone, but you walk in truth, and that is a path only few can understand. There is a particular kind of mind that finds its nourishment not in noise but in silence. It does not shrink from solitude, it thrives within it. For this kind of person, being alone is not a punishment, it is a return. In a world that fears stillness and fills every gap with distraction, this person turns away and walks inward, not because they are antisocial or cold, but because they hear something in that silence that the outer world cannot provide. In solitude, they reconnect with themselves, not the self that plays roles and fulfills duties, but the self that watches, waits, and knows. To be comfortable with solitude is to trust that your inner world is enough. This is not an escape from reality. It is an entry into a deeper reality. In solitude, you hear your thoughts with clarity. You begin to distinguish between what is yours and what has been imposed upon you. You realize how many of your opinions, your reactions, your fears were absorbed from others. When you are alone, these foreign layers begin to fall away. What remains is raw and real. And this, though at times unsettling, is where you begin to encounter the truth of your being. Others may find this solitude difficult to understand. They measure connection by the number of interactions, the frequency of conversation, the presence of constant company. But you do not hunger for attention. You hunger for authenticity. You are not fed by the crowd. You are fed by depth. A single hour of honest solitude brings you more than days of shallow company. In this way, you begin to differentiate yourself, not in arrogance, but in orientation. You are simply tuned to another frequency, and that frequency is only audible in stillness. This relationship with solitude is also a mirror. It shows you what you are made of. There is no one to impress, no performance to give. In solitude, your illusions are stripped away, and what remains is either your truth or your torment. But even this torment is valuable. It is a signal, a teacher. It points you to the places within yourself that are unresolved. And because you do not run from it, you are able to grow. Most people distract themselves when discomfort arises. You, on the other hand, turn toward it. You sit with it. You let it speak, and through this you gain strength. There is also a kind of mystery that opens in solitude, when you are quiet. When the outer world recedes, the inner world begins to speak. Images, memories, and intuitions rise to the surface. You do not summon them, they emerge. It is as though the psyche, long ignored, seizes the opportunity to make itself known. You begin to see that within you exists a whole landscape, rich with symbolism, emotion, and wisdom. This landscape cannot be accessed in the rush of daily life. It requires time, it requires space. It requires solitude. It is not that you reject others. In fact, you may value deep relationships more than most, but you do not fear being alone. Because solitude is the place where you gather yourself, where you remember who you are. It is your ground, your sanctuary. From there you return to the world, not empty, but full, not distracted, but focused, not lost, but aligned. This is not a common path. The world moves quickly, speaks loudly, and fears stillness. But you have chosen to move slowly, to listen deeply, to dwell in silence, and because of that, you are not easily shaken. You carry within you a calm that does not depend on circumstances. It is not weakness, it is strength born from knowing who you are when the world falls silent. To perceive the world symbolically is to live in a reality that is layered, textured, and alive with hidden meaning. It is to understand that beneath every image, gesture, and experience lies something deeper, something that speaks not to the logical mind but to the soul. For most, a tree is just a tree, a clock just a timepiece, a conversation merely words. But for you, nothing exists in isolation. Everything is part of a pattern. Everything points to something else. You are not content with the literal, you are drawn to the invisible threads that bind reality together. This way of seeing is not chosen. It is awakened, often through pain, through wonder, or through an inexplicable experience that breaks the surface of ordinary life. From that moment on, you begin to see differently. A dream is no longer just the brain's discharge. It is a message, a myth unfolding in your private theater. A storm is not just a weather event. It mirrors the turbulence in your heart. You begin to realize that life is speaking to you constantly, not in the rigid language of reason, but in the fluid grammar of symbol. This symbolic vision allows you to find significance where others see only randomness. You do not dismiss coincidence, you consider synchronicity. You sense that the outer world often mirrors the inner world, and that events carry a kind of poetic intelligence. While others demand proof, you respond to resonance. Something feels meaningful to you before it is logically explained. And more often than not, your feeling is correct, not because you are irrational, but because your perception extends beyond what the eye can see. Symbols are not abstractions to you. They are living entities. A door is not just a door. It is a threshold, a passage, a choice. Fire is not merely combustion. It is transformation, destruction, rebirth. You find meaning in colors, in numbers, in repeating patterns. Your world is not flat, it is mythic. This does not mean you escape reality. It means you experience reality with a deeper richness. You see the sacred woven into the ordinary. This way of thinking often separates you from others, not by your will but by your nature. When you speak, you may use language that seems strange to some, metaphors, images, comparisons that hint at depth. People may not always understand you because they are not used to interpreting the symbolic. They want clear answers and you offer layered insight. They want logic and you offer vision. But this is not a flaw, it is a gift. You are able to communicate truths that cannot be explained in simple terms. You do not just describe, you evoke. Such a mind often finds companionship in art, poetry, and mythology. Not because these are forms of escape, but because they echo your inner knowing. In myth you recognize psychological truths disguised as stories. In poetry you find the language of the soul. In art you see what cannot be said with words. These expressions do not simply entertain. They affirm your experience. They remind you that others too have seen what you see, even across cultures and centuries. Living symbolically also requires discernment. It is easy to get lost in signs, to overinterpret, to confuse fantasy with insight. But when this capacity is balanced, it becomes a profound tool for self-understanding. You begin to see that your life is not a random series of events, but a coherent unfolding, a personal myth being written in real time. To live this way is to be awake, to walk through the world with open eyes, not just to what is there, but to what it means. You are not just passing through life, you are in conversation with it. And in that dialogue, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and the silent becomes eloquent. To feel deeply is not a weakness. It is a profound form of knowing. There are people whose emotional life flows quietly beneath the surface, like an underground river. You are one of them. Where others brush off moods or rush past discomfort, you pause. You sense the undercurrents long before they reach the surface. Your emotions are not fleeting reactions. They are messages, complex and nuanced. And while this often sets you apart, it also grants you a kind of vision, an inner sight that penetrates far beyond what is visible. You have likely been told that you are too sensitive, as if sensitivity were a flaw to be corrected. But what they do not understand is that your sensitivity is not fragility, it is attunement. You are finely tuned to the vibrations that most people miss. You feel shifts in tone, silences between words, the subtle tension behind a smile. You enter a room and sense its emotional climate before a single word is spoken. You do not only listen to what people say, you feel what they do not say. And that depth of perception, while often unrecognized, is one of your greatest strengths. This heightened sensitivity means that your emotional landscape is more intricate than most. Joy is not just happiness, it is a luminous expansion of your being. Sadness is not merely sorrow, it is a descent into truth. Anger is not blind, it is protective, principled, and often tied to justice or authenticity. You do not skim the surface of feeling, you dive into it. And because of this, you understand emotions not just in yourself but in others. You can hold space for pain without flinching. You can witness someone's vulnerability without rushing to fix it. You are not afraid of the depths because you live there. Such emotional depth often leads to a strong inner life. When something affects you, it echoes within for days, sometimes weeks. A passing comment, a moment of beauty, an act of betrayal, these are not minor events. They imprint on your psyche. You reflect, you analyze, you revisit. This is not overthinking, it is inner dialogue. It is the way your soul processes experience. You are not content to move on without meaning. You need to understand what something meant, not just what happened. But this gift also comes with its burdens. There are times when the emotional weight feels too much to carry. You may absorb the emotions of others and mistake them for your own. You may feel overwhelmed by the suffering of the world, unable to turn away. You may find it hard to explain the intensity of your reactions, especially to those who live more comfortably on the surface. And yet, it is precisely this capacity for feeling that enables you to connect, to heal, to empathize in ways that most cannot. Your emotions are not obstacles to be conquered, they are guides to be followed. Each one carries a truth, and you have learned to listen. You understand that discomfort often precedes growth, that sadness can lead to clarity, that grief, though heavy, is an expression of love. You know that numbness is not peace, and that genuine peace is not the absence of feeling, but the integration of it. In a world that rewards detachment and praises stoicism, your emotional depth may be misunderstood, but you are not here to conform to emotional shallowness. You are here to feel fully, to witness the human experience in all its richness, and to embody a kind of wisdom that cannot be found in intellect alone. Through your emotions you have come to know what it means to be truly alive, and in that knowing you carry a rare and beautiful strength. There is a difference between a name and a self, between an image and an essence. Most people live comfortably within the structure of identity handed to them: name, profession, gender, nationality, role. These become the boundaries of who they think they are. But for you, something deeper stirs. You cannot accept the surface without questioning what lies beneath. You feel that identity, as it is commonly presented, is a mask, a necessary one perhaps, but still a mask. And because of this you cannot help but look behind it, in yourself and in everyone you meet. From a young age, you may have sensed the gap between how people present themselves and what they truly are. You watched how people performed roles: the dutiful child, the confident leader, the agreeable friend, but beneath their rehearsed expressions you noticed flickers of something else: doubt, longing, unresolved pain. You began to realize that identity is often a construct, built from expectation and survival rather than truth, and this realization pushed you into a life of inner inquiry. not to dismantle identity for its own sake, but to discover what is real beyond the layers. You began to question yourself in the same way. Who am I, really, beneath the opinions of others? What remains when no one is watching? When I strip away the roles I play, student, parent, partner, achiever, what is left? These are not easy questions. They disturb the comfort of certainty. They shake the foundation of self-image. But you do not fear this shaking. You welcome it, because you know that only by breaking through the false can the true be revealed. This way of seeing has profound consequences. It makes you slow to judge and quick to observe. You no longer believe the first version of someone you meet. You listen beyond their words. You look into their eyes and feel their contradictions. You are not content with a smile that hides sorrow or with confidence that masks insecurity. You long to meet people in their wholeness, not just in their polish. And when you do connect with someone at that deeper level, it is sacred because it is rare. You are also aware that the self is not fixed but unfolding. You recognize that who you were last year is not who you are now, and that this transformation is natural. You embrace the idea that identity is fluid, emerging from the dynamic play between conscious choices and unconscious forces. You no longer ask, "Who am I?" expecting a single answer. Instead, you live the question. You allow your identity to evolve through experience, reflection, and confrontation with the unknown. This journey often sets you apart. In a world that rewards consistency, you may be accused of being inconsistent. In a culture that values clear self-definitions, you may seem uncertain. But this is not confusion. It is honesty. You are not pretending to know who you are at every moment. You are committed to discovering it, over and over again. You are not seeking an identity to wear. You are seeking a self to become. There is great courage in this. To question identity is to walk through the fire of disillusionment. It is to let go of the comforting illusions that keep people safe but small. And yet, in doing so, you open yourself to the vastness of who you truly are. Not just a role, not just a label, but a complex, evolving being whose essence cannot be reduced to any single form. In that complexity, you find authenticity. In that unraveling, you find freedom. And while most may never understand your path, it is yours alone to walk, and it leads not to an image, but to the soul. To hold contradiction without collapsing into confusion is a rare ability. Most people crave certainty, simple answers, and clean divisions. They want the world to be either this or that, good or evil, right or wrong, love or hate. But you have come to know that the soul does not obey these lines. Within you, opposing forces coexist. You do not need to resolve them into harmony, because you recognize that their very tension is what makes you whole. You are not afraid of paradox. You live inside it, and in doing so you reveal a deeper kind of wisdom. This capacity did not come easily. It may have emerged from suffering, from inner conflict, from long periods of questioning. You learned that light casts shadows, that love includes pain, that truth wears many masks. You felt the agony of wanting to believe one thing while knowing another. You wrestled with opposing instincts, your desire to belong and your need to be free, your longing to trust and your impulse to protect yourself. These were not abstract philosophical problems, they were lived realities, and rather than deny either side, you dared to hold both. You began to see that contradiction is not the enemy of truth, but often the birthplace of it. The psyche is not linear. It is not built of neat compartments that stay separate and orderly. It is a dynamic field of tension, a living dialogue between opposites. You are both strength and vulnerability, chaos and order, reason and emotion. You are capable of compassion and rage in the same breath. You can love someone deeply and also know you must let them go. These are not signs of confusion. They are signs of depth. Living with this kind of awareness demands a certain inner spaciousness. You have to create room inside yourself for discomfort, ambiguity, and unresolved questions. Most people try to escape this by clinging to one side of a polarity. They choose optimism and reject despair, or they define themselves by doubt and refuse hope. But you let both breathe. You understand that by holding both ends of the spectrum, A third space emerges, a space not of compromise but of integration. A space where complexity is not a problem, but a doorway. This is not a passive stance. It requires discipline, reflection, and the ability to observe your own thoughts without becoming trapped in them. It asks that you let go of the ego's need to be right, to be certain, to be in control. And yet what arises in its place is something far more enduring, a sense of inner equilibrium, a kind of rootedness that does not depend on fixed answers. You are not at the mercy of contradiction, you are in conversation with it. This ability also gives you an unusual kind of empathy. Because you understand inner tension, you can understand others who are torn within themselves. You do not rush to fix them or force them into clarity. You meet them where they are in the in-between, in the confusion, in the becoming. You are able to listen not just to what people say, but to what they mean beneath their contradictions. And in doing so, you become a mirror for their complexity, a witness to their truth. The world often misunderstands this way of being. People may accuse you of being indecisive, vague, or too abstract. But they do not see the strength it takes to live without clinging to false certainty. They do not understand that truth is often not a conclusion, but a tension held over time. You are not confused. You are aware. You are not divided. You are whole. And in that wholeness born from contradiction, you carry a light that cannot be extinguished by simplicity.